So I'm Dr. Jenny Hatchard. I am an Access Fellow here on the project. I've been with the project since September. I've been working with an amazing team of people on the guiding principles. The team listed here who are in the room, many of whom are going to be helping with the workshops today. And I should thank them. I should thank all the people who are going to be helping with note-taking, which is even in addition to this team. And also all the people who agreed to because they give up quite a lot of their time for me, which I really appreciate. So, quick aims. I'm going to share some news of the evaluation, which is still in its kind of very early phases in the sense that we've done quite a lot of data collection, but not much else. Want to work with you to develop our thinking and how the principles work in practice. And the session is split into these two bits. I'm going to talk to you for 10 minutes, and then we're going to go and join some research workshops and discuss some of the things around the guiding principles. So I wanted to start with a reminder of the guiding principles because I'm conscious that perhaps some people are new to Access and are not aware of these principles and how they've been kind of established and integrated into the project. So there are three. The first is environmental sustainability. And really, as a project and as a network, we aim to embed environmental sustainability into our practice. The second is equality, diversity and inclusion. So we aim to foster this safe and welcoming and inclusive culture that thinks across these three areas of inclusion. And then knowledge co-production. So adopt and promote knowledge co-production across the Access network. So it becomes part of what we do as a matter of course. Now, these three principles are not groundbreaking. Lots of people use these principles in their work, and then so they're not unique to Access, and we're not claiming to have invented them. However, what we are doing is thinking about them as a framework and using them in a way where we consider the implications across the three principles. So we're thinking about an integrated approach to these three guiding principles. They were developed by the team before I arrived through research on best practice, consultation with Access stakeholders, and through self-reflection and feedback within the project. And as Patrick described yesterday, there's a real culture of evaluation and reflection within Access, and this is part of that. They were published formally in 2023, and we're hoping off the back of this evaluation that we'll be able to produce both a revised version of the guidance, but also perhaps some more practical tools that we'll be able to use to share with the community within Access, but beyond Access as well, to make it possible for people to take up this practice if that's what they want to do. The framework is relevant across academic, policy and practice settings. It's not just for university researchers. And we've been, well, I think it's probably in the planning, but as part of Access, we have the Flex Fund, and we heard from three of those projects yesterday, and we required the Flex Fund projects to consider how they were going to integrate those principles from the application stage. So we've had that opportunity to see the principles working in practice. And we've also had people across Access trying to implement these principles. So there's been quite a lot of users since 2023 when they were published. Keep up with my paperwork, hang on. Okay, so those were the three aims. And there's this idea that there's a framework, but we don't want to set rules because we all work in quite different settings and it's very context specific. So instead, we provide prompts for considering the implications of our practice within those specific contexts. And we encourage reflective dialogue about how those three principles are integrated. And the intention is to help practitioners make conscious, considered choices when they're planning their environmental social science research. So when they're planning an event or when they're planning some data collection, when they're thinking about their impact, all of these things, there's an opportunity to consider how these guiding principles factor in. Just checking the time. Okay, so the evaluation study so far. We are evaluating the practice and value of this integrated approach to the guiding principles. We've conducted 26 interviews with 27 participants in the spring this year. we asked people about their previous use. So we wanted to just break the ice, really, but also to hear, have you used these principles before? Are they familiar? We wanted to hear detailed stories of practicing projects. So the design of the interview guide was sort of quite, not interrogative, it was very friendly, but we asked people to break down the project where they'd used the guiding principles into the kind of constituent phases. And then we asked them about how they applied the principles in each of those phases and how the principles interacted with one another. And then finally, we asked them about the impact of using the principles on their project, whether they had any suggestions for guidance, and whether they have any future intentions around using the principles as they go forward in their work. So far, as I said, it's early stage. So there was a notes document as part of the data collection. We've done some initial analysis on that notes document, and we've looked at the synergies and tensions that were present within the data. And we've also looked at the changes to guidance, which I'm not going to cover today. And the intention is to focus in the workshops today on tensions kind of framed as dilemmas. These three things underlined, I'm just going to follow up a little bit on those. So previous use, tensions, and then the dilemmas. There's some lovely pictures here of me. We asked people about their previous use of the principles, but all of that is confidential and I can't tell anybody else's story. So I thought, well, here's mine. In the centre of the slide, next to the lovely illustration of the guiding principles that we have as part of the project, is a picture of me in 2003 on a fishing boat, former fishing boat in Iceland, going whale watching with some project colleagues. I was based in Newcastle, working on a project looking at ecosystem management of fisheries, and it was a big European framework project. So there was a lot of travelled all over Europe, travelled all the way over to Vancouver in the end. And while there was a consciousness of environmental sustainability in terms of maybe our procurement, the paper that we used, I don't think we were really thinking that much about the travel that we conducted at that time. It's more than 20 years ago. You can see I'm having a great time, and I'm the one second from the left, and I'm not undermining the value of that travel as that in that early career researcher position. It was very, very valuable to me in terms of experience and networking. Second picture is 10 years later in 2014, and by then I'd moved into public health research, and in public health research, EDI is kind of at the core of what happens. Health inequalities is a massive theme, a massive sort of set of principles that underpin doing public health research. So at that point, I think I started to think more about EDI as an element of my own research practice. And Athena Swan was kind of becoming a thing around then. And I also had some children. So all of a sudden, the idea of international travel was not really quite so practical or attractive. So again, it provided space for reflection on where I wanted to travel to and whether that was a good idea for both the environment and for myself. And there were definitely trips that I turned down during that period for both of those reasons, kind of a combination. Picture on the far right is, the Access team will recognise this, and apologies for sharing if anyone's bothered. This is our retreat in January. We went to, we're in the middle of a vineyard in January. And I'm the second from the left in the yellow coat. And really, I just wanted to say that the knowledge co-production element of Access and its principles is something that has threaded through all of my research career. And it's really nice to spend this time reflecting on that element of the research and how these things fit together in my practice. So that's just my story. The other stories are amazing. I thought you'd like the pictures. So a little bit about tensions, keeping an eye on the time. These are the areas from that initial analysis. So this isn't going to be this isn't going to be the focus of the final paper necessarily, but from the initial analysis, these are the things that pop up as kind of cutting across the principles. And the three at the top, the participation in meetings, the catering for events, and the international recruitment, really brought in all three of the principles. People struggled across these three principles: EDI, so equality, diversity, and inclusion; environmental sustainability; and knowledge co-production, And they struggled both in decision making and then in practice to find accommodations that worked for all of the things that they were trying to value in that research or in that project. And then the other ones further down, resources, payment for participants, invisible barriers to access, which feels like a mystery now I've written that down, but it really reflects some comments that were made during the interviews on the things that we don't really see that affect whether people travel or access particular kind of activities. Things like neurodiversity, things like whether people have allergies, and also I think social anxiety, while it wasn't a real focus, sort of filters through a lot of the conversations I had with people about how they found knowledge co-production and EDI and trying to kind of combine those things. So those elements of research practice or of just implementing research projects, because some of the interviewees were also kind of project management staff rather than environmental social scientists, cut across more than one of the principles, as is illustrated here. So the yeses mean, yes, there was some tension, and the ends mean, no, there was no tension. And the two at the top with the large bar around them are the ones that we're going to focus on in the workshops today. And they may sound mundane, but these are the things that people really struggled with. And I think there are some interesting conversations to be had to help us unpick how we might provide better advice in the future to users of the principles who want to integrate them. One quick word on why dilemmas. I think I've leapt on this as a concept, and I'm sure there'll be some reflection after the workshops today. They can feel like irresolvable binary choices. You sort of feel like you've got to choose this thing or that thing. You can't combine the principles. You find yourself in a binary conversation in your reflection. But perhaps they could be comprised of navigable tensions between principles, and they can be resolvable through dialogue and reflection, and that's what the framework really encourages. So instead of thinking I've got to make a choice between doing something in a really co-productive way or doing something in an environmentally sustainable way, how can I combine those two things and come up with a plan that will enable both to the satisfaction of the team and the participants and everyone involved. And we're interested in that process of decision making. So the box at the bottom, imagine you've got something to decide, organise or convene, and you've got these guiding principles that you're feeding in. These are the things that are driving your practice. But in the black box, perhaps you're making decisions, compromises, trade-offs, prioritizations or innovations that then subsequently lead to action. And we're interested in what happens in that box. So that's just a bit of the background for what we're thinking about. Still good. An example dilemma. So the dilemmas, there are only 26 interviews. I haven't used a story from any particular interview. Instead, I've created fictional composites from the collection of the interviews in order to protect the confidentiality of the participants. But we wanted them to feel like tangible situations, so we've kind of created them as a more developed concept than just kind of one sentence. Here's an example of the international settings, and we're not going to use this one in the workshops, so don't feel like you've got to scribble down anything. You're part of an international environmental social science project in the process of recruiting staff. You'd like to recruit a diverse international team and provide them with opportunities for career development, broadly EDI relevance. You foresee additional benefits from collaboration and outputs produced by a team with diverse perspectives. So there's an opportunity for knowledge co-production within the project team, but you're worried about the combined environmental footprint for the project of both work and personal travel. So for example, if you've got academics who are living away from their own home country, or if there is necessary kind of meeting travel to be had, which will mean moving people around quite a lot. And then the idea is to, when we get into the workshops, to sit down and think about what does this mean, what's our experience of this, and how might we identify actions which enable all three of the principles effectively as far as we can. And somewhere in my notes, I did have a couple of thoughts about what this one would kind of come up with. Here we go. So maybe they'll find a way to locate researchers in their own countries, bring training and opportunities to them instead of locating training in a centralised space. And maybe they'll innovate their knowledge co-production practice in this way to make it possible to meet the aims of the project. So just kind of think about how resources are deployed, where people are kind of expected to be, and how that might work in practice. That's just an example. What we're going to do next, so we're going to move into breakout rooms. There are 5 in person and there is one team here, so if you're online it should be very straightforward. Each breakout group will have one facilitator and one note taker, and there's a set of ground rules for kind of engagement which we'll share within the breakout rooms. Participation is completely optional because this is research rather than just an event. It requires giving your consent to participate, and we do have ethical approval from the University of Exeter. We're not going to be attributing any data, so we're using what's called the Chatham House rule, which means that everyone in the room can participate and speak freely, but no one in the room can then take away those stories and attribute them to any of the participants. It's quite common practice in policy circles and also in research. So anything you say will stay in the room, and we won't be, we're not recording, but we will be making notes, and there will be a sort of flip chart to kind of keep the conversation going. But we won't be attributing your comments to you personally. They'll just be to that group. Oh, jump. I've jumped to the end. Am I entitled? Am I even able to fix this? I'd have to go back to all the slides. Trevor? Oh, thank you. Yeah, that would have been an idea. Yeah, so it's not that one, the one above. It was all going so smoothly. Yeah, I've done that one, so it's this one. And then just like this. It's saved. Oh, except we've got the notes. Fantastic. The link to the information sheet was provided, and thank you, Trevor, in the programme. There's also a QR code here. There are a couple of paper copies in the room, and the QR code will also be on the screen in the workshop rooms. Just looking at people's phones in the air. Unfortunately, it's a classic University of Exeter information sheet, so it's quite comprehensive. Just still one person at the back. I'm scared to touch the next button. Okay. Because it's voluntary, I want to make sure that people have got some idea of what they might do instead if they don't want to participate, but we really do want you to participate. There's a QR code for the map and a QR code for some Jubilee walks around campus, which allow you to investigate the water features of the campus. And the campus is so gorgeous, but I also appreciate quite hot. There's also quite a lot of cafes where you can make yourself comfortable. So want to make that available. And I can put that one back up in a minute. And then the last slide is just to tell you where you're going, which is also stuck just outside here. All of these rooms are in the corridor on the way back to the atrium. Conference rooms are on the left. Seminar rooms are on the right. And I've run over because of my technical error. So unless there's anything that's like, I really have to ask this question, we should all progress.
Just want to mention that conference room won't be air conditioned.
There's no choice here, Steve.